Good night, Eric.
Good night, Abby.
All the sexy people.
Come hang out with Geek Legion of Doom.
Chad McClarnon directs and co-writes The Other People, a 2025 horror thriller movie. Now, the focus is on this new family. We have a dad, his daughter, and his new girlfriend and then wife in the movie. And at the beginning of the film, we see the dad and his daughter meet this woman, fall in love and move in together, and they move into this particular house. But the young girl seems to, by all accounts, have this like imaginary friend. And they kind of write it off as just kids' imagination, but there may be more to it than that, as there appears to be not just a child kind of living in the house, but maybe other people as well. But are they people, or could they be something else? And is this problem even more widespread than the actual house? You'll have to watch the movie and find out. So, let's talk about it. What works in this movie's favour? So, as I've mentioned in some reviews before, I don't really go into movies knowing a lot about them. I don't really read the synopsis and things like that. I don't watch a trailer. And this was sent to me as a screener. And it is more of a thriller than a horror film, I would say. There are horror elements here, but the horror is more suggested rather than kind of overtly on screen. But it's an interesting premise in some ways, and apparently it's based on true events. Although I suspect you have seen, there are a couple of films which have dealt with a kind of a similar premise, like strangers living in a house, like secret people living in a property. This one adds an air of ambiguity about what's actually kind of going on, and are these actually even people? Could they be something else? But you know, the kind of the premise is one there has been a few films about in the past. But it's an intriguing one nonetheless, and what this film does, it adds this air of ambiguity, as I say. So you're kind of unsure about what the actual F is going on a lot of the time. Because the movie deliberately keeps you at arm's length as to the situation. It's trying to kind of keep you in the same kind of idea about maybe what this family are kind of coming to realise. In particular, the new mum, the stepmum, is the one that really starts to suspect something. So it has a definite air of mystery about it, and you're quite intrigued about, okay, so what is going on? What's actually happening here? On top of that, I would say I think the performances are all very good. Some of the dialogue is a little bit ham-fisted, but it's not necessarily the actors' fault. I do think they do a decent enough job here. The movie, a lot of it takes place in the dark because the thing is, these other people living in the shadows. So a lot of it is kind of kept in shadows and kept, in the dark for dramatic purposes, and also, that's what they do. This is what these individuals are like. But it gives it this sort of spooky ambience, so to speak. The movie is also punctuated with a couple of fairly shocking scenes. One in particular, which happens probably just after the halfway mark. I was like, they're not really going to do that, are they? They are. And I was like, damn. Okay, I was not expecting the movie to go down that way. So the movie has a couple of pretty shocking moments, I have to say. And elements you just won't see coming. And even a couple of more brutal elements. But they are few and far between, and not explicit on screen or anything like that. So the movie also, I have to say, this is going to be a positive and negative. It's more suggesting. This is a movie which might not necessarily give you all of the answers. And certainly at the end of this movie, you are kind of hankering to know more. which is a good and a bad thing, because I think the movie kind of ends on an intriguing note, but at the same time, it might be frustrating, which leads me on to what doesn't work. And again, without really going into any kind of detail here for fear of spoilers, I do feel some will feel this movie has a very frustrating end to it, because you don't be expecting to know everything. The movie also suggests there's a lot more kind of going on than maybe you'll even get answers to. So I think, although the movie certainly for me, I was like, wow, that's fairly an intriguing ending here. And again, it sort of points to a larger world. It points to maybe there's some sort of phenomena that's going on that maybe some people are kind of like privy to and not others, and things like that. But at the same time, I feel like it definitely is a movie that is not going to give you all of the answers. It's not going to tell you what is actually happened here, which might be frustrating, and I totally understand that, and it's fair comment, because it doesn't do that by choice. So the movie does have a degree of frustration to it. But what else can I say? As I mentioned, there's a few kind of lines of dialogue here which I thought were on the hammy side. There are a few things where I just feel logic kind of left the room. There's multiple times where people are creeping around in the dark and not turning on the light for no apparent reason. A few elements like this, how sort of, again I'll go back to the dialogue, how things are explained, like how, for example, the wife is trying to tell the husband about what's going on. She makes it sound like, you know, she doesn't explain it in a way which is sensible. Again, some of the actions that people are taking, again, really in the second half of the movie, I just didn't feel were made a lot of sense, I have to say. The police get involved. They seem particularly inept, I have to say, and again, do some very, I think, gotta say, unprofessional sort of things here. The other element, which is also a little, I feel is a design choice, maybe more so than a lack of technical prowess, but there is some rough editing here. Some of the scenes, the way they're kind of stitched together, are really disjointed. Now, I suspect this was an artistic choice, but it's extraordinarily jarring sometimes, some of these kind of, the way these scenes are edited together. And like I say, I think this is probably an artistic choice rather than, well, I hope it is, rather than sort of just plain old bad editing. But yeah, there's some real rough edits here, I have to say. However, whatever the reason, I've got to say, I think there are some silly elements and just some stuff I think, I mean, despite this, and I have heard of these kind of like strangers in a house and stuff. I remember watching another film which had a similar premise, and that was based on a true story. So it obviously has happened, or similar things to this. But again, it just seems a little bit far-fetched, to be honest with you. You know, and then again, it sort of suggests more of a supernatural element to it, but it's really not given any more than just a suggestion. And there's also plot elements here where I feel it sort of introduces like a plot thread, and then nothing is done with it. Like, it's introduced that the husband starts to have an affair with like his assistant, but it never really plays into the movie. You know, it doesn't have any bearing on the actual sort of film itself. There's also some stuff going on with like a neighbour that it's sort of introduced, but then something happens with that, and then again it's never called back to. So why even have that? I mean, it just doesn't. It seems like elements here that were sort of introduced and then like, well, maybe it's been edited out, or they've changed their mind and things like that. So I've got to say, I think this movie's somewhat sort of choppy. So, you know, it makes for an intriguing watch, but a flawed watch. Do you know, I was oscillating between a 5 and a 6 for this one, but now I've kind of talked it through with you guys. I'm going to settle on a 5 here, because I just think this movie is flawed, but it's not a bad movie necessarily. It sort of hits that middle ground. Intriguing for some, frustrating for others. 5 out of 10. What were your thoughts? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time.
Geek Legion of Doom tastes delicious.